Oh, friends, it's time to meet our first guest, and I'm really, really excited to welcome them. I want you to note that, as always, there's going to be time during this discussion for the educators present to ask questions of our guests. So if a question comes to you, will you please submit it in the chat directly to Dan Marshall? And we may even put you on screen. So tidy up, y'all. Put on your lashes, 3 on top, 2 on the bottom. Company is here. To prepare for this conversation, we're going to take a look at this clip of our first guest in action in the Met's 2018 production of Cendrillon.
Prenez en maintien gracieux, en arrondissant votre bouche, bien n'y pas les parfait, on ne peut mieux, ne soyez pas banal, ni trop original. Nous allons traverser, nous allons traverser. Il nous traînons des chansons. Notre seul succès nous allons voir. Où sera mon espoir? Où sera mon espoir? Faites votre belle ce soir. Nous serons très belles ce soir. Ce soir.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Since winning the Met Opera National Council auditions in 1994, our guest has had one of the most storied and awesome careers in the whole business of opera, whether it be rating a divine husband who is making bad choices in Wagner's Ring Cycle or rediscovering her long-lost child in La Fille du Rogemont. She is a performer who combines insane vocal skills with glorious acting chops. And as you have seen, she is pure comic gold. She is a performer. She is an educator. She is a drag king. She is a ukulelist. She is all that and so much more. Please join me in giving some Zoom love to the beloved Stephanie Blythe. Stephanie, reveal yourself. Yes, Stephanie
Here
Blythe.
I am.
Hi, there you are. You look, not to objectify you, you look great, Stephanie Blythe. Hi, I'm Susan Blackwell. It's so nice to meet you.
Lovely.
So happy that you're here. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. Would you care to share, no pressure, but would you care to share your pronouns and a visual description of yourself?
Well, a visual description of myself.
Yeah.
Well, I go by she, her pronouns, and I am a voluptuous Juno-esque gal with long blonde hair, and I can rock a red lip. How about
Love
that?
it.
Is that all right?
Perfection. It's perfection. Stephanie, I'm sorry to subject you to this, but I do like to play a game with our guests. I call it 60-second life story. I'm going to put a tight 60 seconds on the clock. You get to tell me your whole life story. Don't leave out the awesome parts. Starting now.
I was born in Ellenville, New York. I went to school in SUNY Potsdam. I ended up at the Young Artist Program at the Metropolitan Opera. I've been singing there for the last almost 28 years. I have a phenomenal husband we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this month. I have 2 great dogs. I live in Pennsylvania. What else? I love the ukulele. What else? I'm a big fan of 1980s and 1990s electronic music. What else?
Yes.
My favorite singer is Sammy Davis Jr. And I make a really good hash to eat.
Really?
I make a really good hash.
In the last 7 seconds, can you say what you put in a really good hash?
A really good hash. I put in any deli cut squash, leftover meatloaf, red peppers, and eggs. I put crack 2 eggs on the top and cook them. It's fabulous.
I'm
Very,
writing
very
this
good. Don't forget
down.
the onion and the garlic, of course. So that's my hash, yes.
I'll be enjoying that later. Thank you so much. That's news we can use. Stephanie, we are so stoked to have you here. Our theme, as you know, is opera by design. And I just
Yes.
want to ask you this question.
Mhm.
Is there a design element that you have experienced at the Met in a particularly memorable moment in a production that you were not in that you would like to share with us?
Yes. Well, let me just say, yes, I can, and I was sort of in it, but not completely. My debut at the Met was Parsifal in 1995. I was the offstage voice at the end of the first act. I have a very active Boston Terrier, and this is her play hour. So if you see me tossing a ball, that's what it is.
What's that little dog's name?
Oh, her name is June.
Hi,
Dainty
June.
June. Yes.
Rock it out, June.
Yes, June. She's definitely doing that. At any rate, I was not actually on the stage in the opera, but I was in it. But for me, that Parsifal was magic. To sit out in the audience, I watched it every single time I could.
Wow.
Because the change when Gornemans and Parsifal would go through the forest to meet up with the rest of the knights, it was the most magical thing I've ever seen. I still don't know how they did it. I really don't, because it went from a forest to this unbelievable indoor sort of dark cathedral feeling that was just, I swear to you, there are two things that I've seen at the Met that I could not tell you how they happened. They were just so magical, and all of a sudden they would happen. I still can't figure it out. That's
Can I
one,
ask,
and the
what
other
was
one,
the other one? Yeah.
the other one was the old Hansel and Gretel, when the children would appear at the end. When the children turned from gingerbread into children. I never saw it happen.
It's
And
like
it was
magic.
so wonderful. That production, that old Hansel and Gretel was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. And it never failed to make me cry. When the angels would appear after the children had sung their lullaby, and these angels would fly into the air, and they were beautiful and long hair and carrying these white gold globes, and glitter would fly out of them every single night. And all of the angels were male dancers that I became friends with. And so, watching Marcus and watching these amazing dancers flying through the air, putting glitter on these children, it was magical. It really was. And I cried every night.
Imagine, Stephanie, like you were a grown adult and you had such a profound, that's such an indelible image that you're describing. And now I'm imagining for the kids that were present,
oh yeah,
where that lives in their memory as well. That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Listen, if nobody knows the magic of glitter better than children and drag kings.
That's right. Printed on a t-shirt. It's got to be true. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but while we're here, I just have to ask you, when you started doing that work at the Met, win that competition, you start doing that work. When you describe that, even being the offstage voice in Parsifal, I'm like, did you feel like you literally won a contest, but getting to be there every night and do that, did it feel like you were like, I'm still winning this contest?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was that night of the first night I did Parsifal was amazing. Pardon me. June, I'm telling you, I don't want to throw this ball all day.
June's part of it now. No need to apologize.
Every single thing I've done, interview, teaching, ukulele video, she's the star.
Come on, June.
I should have known. She's probably a soprano. Anyway, she that very first that Parsifal was amazing. If you can imagine a 24-year-old coming to the Met, singing in this in this incredible production. I was backstage with my own conductor, a video of the conductor, a wall put up behind me to help my voice go out, a stand with my music and a pitch pipe. And for 9 syllables, 9 syllables. And I was singing with Placido Domingo, who was the reason that I became an opera singer.
Mm.
So that really, that was an amazing experience. And it never ceases to be amazing. It's always magical. I sat on the edge of the stage, or just off on stage left, the other day for my first piano tech of Cinderella, pardon me.
Mm.
And I haven't been on that stage in 2 years.
Yeah.
And I had the same butterflies that I had back in 1994, same exact ones. And it's thrilling and exciting and nauseating all at once.
All at once.
All
That
at
is
once.
it. That is amazing.
Mhm.
Stephanie, as you may know, present for this conversation is our community of educators who are instilling a love of opera in their students. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how you first came to love music?
My father was a jazz musician, so we had music in my house all the time. We didn't listen to singers. My dad didn't like singers. My mother was a German interpreter, and she was the one who got me interested in symphonic music and showed me my first opera, which was on PBS. It was Tosca. I was probably 11, maybe 12.
Wow.
And I completely fell in love with opera in that moment. And I also decided very early on that my favorite singer was Pavarotti, which made me very, very popular with all of the kids at school. And I was very fortunate. I grew up near Monticello, New York, and we had the Monticello Central School District had a very, very strong music program. And we did a play and a musical every year in high school. We had a band, a concert band, a mixed chorus, a women's chorus, a stage band, and also the band that would play for the musical. So I was in all of those organizations. I did all of that, and I had a really, really strong supportive relationship with all of my friends there, this core of friends,
Yeah.
and our music teachers who were very, very supportive and wonderful, and we were really encouraged, and we performed a lot. So that's really how I started. And it was interestingly, it was my high school chorus teacher, Martin Banner, who really fostered my love of singing at first. He's the one who convinced my father to let me join the chorus, and to take private voice lessons. And I ended up going to SUNY Potsdam and the Crane School of Music because Martin had gone there. I studied with his voice teacher, Patricia Mislin, and it was because of her that I am singing today.
Wow.
And unfortunately, we lost Pat about 3 days ago. She passed away. So all of these memories are very, very fresh and churning around in my head right now.
Of course.
So those were the people that really, that fostered my my love of music and my love of singing and performing.
I just want to say I'm so sorry for your loss. And I think this group that is assembled here can really understand, as teachers and as students, how seminal these relationships and these experiences that you had
Absolutely.
with these teachers. It just gives me such a visceral feeling to hear you talk about it. But I am sorry for your loss. Yeah.
I thank you very much. It's very interesting to me that I can tell you with absolute certainty that everyone who is on this today was saved by a music teacher. Every single one. I dare anybody to say, no, that's not the case. Every one of you has been saved by a music teacher. I was saved by a music teacher. And most of my colleagues will, if they're asked that question, that's exactly what happens. And when I say saved, I mean saved in every possible way. Because those of us who go into this profession, whether we perform or whether we teach, or we facilitate performance. It is those first, I'll borrow your word, seminal relationships that we have with those teachers that make us feel like we belong. And most everybody in performance is somebody who at some point did not feel like they belonged.
Mm.
So it is extraordinarily important to me to acknowledge that and to say thank you to all of you for that, because I know you're all superheroes. And now to be an educator myself is a great honor and responsibility. And I'm very, very grateful to anybody who goes into the business of promoting art.
You know, you, like you said, you are actually so remarkable to me, Stephanie, because you are somebody who is a world-class artist and then an educator working at extremely high levels. And you specifically, you're the artistic director of graduate vocal arts, of the vocal arts program at Bard College, which is fancy, very, very fancy. But I want to talk to you a little bit. I've heard that you have an assignment, and please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but I heard you have an assignment where you have your students explore any opera role that they want, regardless of their vocal type or their gender. Can you tell us a little bit about that assignment? Because,
Sure.
you know, as teachers, we're always looking for that good curriculum. Can you tell us a little bit about that assignment?
Well, it was an opera that I did with them the very first semester that I was there, or the second semester I was there, just before the pandemic shut everything down. I wanted to do an opera with them. We have a very boutique program at Bard, and at the time had only 14 grad students. We never really exceed 18. We have 18 right now, which is a lot. But because it's a small program, they get a lot of individualized attention. But I wanted to find an opera that we could do that would give all 14 of them something to do.
Wow. Which,
you can't find. And I don't particularly care for scenes programs unless they're sort of an educational. We do scenes programs, but they're in an opera workshop. And so I thought, well, I'll create something with them. We'll do a pastiche of some kind. So I went in and we had a big meeting as a group. And I said to them all, look, I want you to choose 5 operas, any operas. So they did. They chose Carmen, Bohème, Giovanni, Ariadne of Naxos, and the Tenderland. And I said, now I want you to choose any character in any of those operas, regardless of gender or voice type, that you would like to play. And then I would like you to choose an aria to sing, not necessarily connected to the opera, but an aria from these 5 operas that you'd like to sing, regardless of gender or voice type. So I gave them a conceit, and the conceit was that for the whole piece was that opera had died, and they were all attending a funeral for opera. And that is why all 14 of these characters could be in the same place at the same time. And so we constructed a story through lots and lots of talking, of improvisation, of story writing, of backstory writing, and they created all of the connective tissue themselves. They wrote the script themselves as a group. And we created a story that essentially opera was dying to itself and giving them the gift of self-determination. So all these characters could be who they wanted to be. So we had Escamillo giving up his job. He didn't want to be a toreador anymore. So our number one piece of prop was a beautiful coffin we found on eBay. And that was the center prop. And we were all in a very sparse funeral parlor that we projected all sorts of different scenes on the walls and
it's so good. It's so good.
And we had our commendatore was a contralto who sang Vecchia Zimara. We had a wonderful countertenor who played Mercedes, but ended up being Carmen and sang the habanera. Wonderful, wonderful non-binary baritone who wanted to be Elvira and sang Mi Tradi, a third down. And all of this was with orchestra, it was with full orchestra. So we had all these, we had at the end of the opera, Harlequin and the composer got together and sang La Cirara en la mano and then disappeared into the coffin together. Things, stuff like that. And then, so all these characters either worked out their personal issues on stage during this moment, or became new characters, or just realized things about themselves that would help them to take the next step forward. And at the end, they placed all of these things symbolically as pieces of music that were given to them by the composer, and put them in the coffin. And a tree grew from it, and they sang The Promise of Living from the Tenderland. So, all of this was, what was wonderful about this was it gave them agency.
Yeah.
And it gave them ownership. And it made everything very real and specific. And it was a really wonderful exercise that the audience truly enjoyed. I got some of the most wonderful comments from the audience because they were seeing characters that were beloved doing new things. Zerbinetta, instead of singing her aria to Ariadne, sang it to Elvira. It was very appropriate in the moment.
Stephanie, I love this. I love this for like 17 reasons. I love empowering people's creativity, that they don't have to wait for external opportunities. But I also love, for the educators that are listening to this, if you may be thinking, well, I don't have the budget for a coffin, I encourage you to think about, even within creative limitations, what could you borrow from this? What could you do? How could you take this into your classrooms? It's so inventive. And I have to imagine that your students also had, clearly you had a very satisfying experience, but it's not, I bet your students did as well.
Well, it was wonderful because it was my first real opportunity to direct an opera, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, but also because it gave me an opportunity to pass on to these wonderful young artists skill sets that I have been gleaning, over the last 20 odd years.
Yeah.
And that was just a great opportunity. I mean, this is also something, you can really do something like this on a budget. We really did this on a budget, on a shoestring budget, but it was very, very satisfying. And also it was great because it gave us an opportunity to examine character in a new way and give them an opportunity to kind of construct a way of looking at character that they can do, way down the line. And also this, in many, in future roles that they take on. And also I'm very interested in this idea of blowing up the idea of Fach, because in my own life, it doesn't exist. And I think that, for a lot of these singers and for a lot of young people, the idea of identity and voice type is very important.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of really important questions that are being asked and conversations that are being had. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. I think everybody knows this, but Fa is voice type. And I agree. I love anything that's sort of, some of these like older narratives and conventions, anything that sort of crackles them and explodes them. I'm with you. I love it.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I'm going to take a turn in this conversation. And because we are talking about opera by design, I just want folks to sample the breadth of your work. And this is just a teeny tiny sampling. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to show some photos of you in action on stage at the Met. And if you could just tell us a little bit about what we're seeing. We have about 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe like 7 photos we're going to show.
Okay.
And so Dan, when you're ready, let's see that first photo. Stephanie, what are we seeing here?
We are seeing the third act of Cendrillon. in 2018, and this is the sisters and Madame de Altière having returned from the ball and talking about what a horrifying time they had there because this upstart came in and sort of threw, tipped over their dream apple cart. And this is just before she's about to sing her big aria. Yeah, that's it. That's what you're seeing.
This costume is, the design just contained within this one photo is nutrageous. Tell us about working in this costume. How do you get into something like this?
I go into, I actually very easily, this costume, I actually change into this costume in a 30-second change.
Woo! Get it.
That completely zippers down the front and is taken off in one piece.
Wow.
All those buttons are hiding a zipper. So it's all in one piece, and it's actually 2 bras and a hip cage. So there's a bra on top of the one that I'm actually wearing. So and then there's a cage that comes around that kind of expands everything out. But I switch into that in 30 seconds.
It seems so structural that if you just left it to its own devices, it could stand on its own. Like it is
that
just...
it cannot do. It's actually quite light, which is amazing.
Interesting.
It's not a very heavy it's one of the lightest costumes I've ever worn, thank God. Because we do a lot of running around in it.
It's just transformative. It's really, I love this photo. I could stare at this photo for a good long time. But let's take a look at the next photo. What are we seeing here? Again, the breadth of your work is bananas. It's amazing.
Well, this is Falstaff. This is Mistress Quickly going to see Falstaff in the first scene of the second act. And in this particular iteration of the piece, she's going to a gentleman's club. So she's seeing him in a place that is a forbidden place for a woman to be. So it's shocking that she is there. The costume was absolutely beautiful. The coat is that coat that I get to take off is lined with the same fabric that is made of that the dress is made of. And it has, when it's taken off and revealed, it is quite beautiful. A lot of props with this particular production, and a lot of props with the costume, with all the jewelry and the gloves and everything in the bag and all the different hats. Is quite something. But this is her going to see Falstaff.
Even from this distance, you can see the mischief in your eyes. Look at
that. I've sung a lot of Mistress Quicklies. There's a load of mischief in there.
Let's take a look at the next photo. What is going on here?
Well, that is me sitting on the ram throne on top of the machine.
Like you do.
As you do.
Yeah.
On top of the machine in Die Walküre. In the second scene, in the second act, beginning of the second act of Die Walküre. And here she is having a pitched argument with Wotan, one of the most famous arguments in all of opera. Interestingly, I'm actually tethered to that. Really? I'm wearing underneath my dress, I'm wearing a harness and a belt that is attached to a carabiner that is attached to a harness that's hooked on to that ram cart, which you can sort of see at my feet. You can see that it's on a platform, which started at the very top of the machine and then rolled down, controlled by 4 ropes.
Oh my God.
And I could either stand, sit, or kneel, but I could not leave it.
Your friend, the ram throne.
And I was really frustrated, to be honest with you, I hated that. It was very frustrating. And one of the things I had to do was try to construct a reason why she couldn't leave this thing. And so I decided that because Wotan was the wanderer, he could go all over the stage, but I was the law and I was fixed.
You know what though, Stephanie, as much as that might have been a pain in your backside, it's these are the things that make you a great actor. I mean this sincerely, like that you worked out that story for your character and that justification so that it could inform your work. I do think it's things like this that make you a really, really great actor.
Well, thank you very much. Also,
Wow.
having rams is good.
Also having a ram throne.
Having a ram.
Absolutely, absolutely necessary. What's on your
Yes.
holiday list this year? A ram throne.
Ram
Let's take a
throne.
look at this next photo. Again, like a totally transformed person. What are we looking at?
We're looking at Fille de Régiment, and yes, she has just is actually just made her entrance, and she's petrified because she's surrounded by the great unwashed. She's surrounded by chorus members who are terrifying her, which is very interesting to me because I'm madly in love with the Met Chorus, and whenever I get a chance to, you don't see them in this particular photo, because they've all sort of bid a hasty retreat here at the end of this, but I have a wonderful relationship with the Met Chorus, and I love any opportunity I have to do a scene with the Met Chorus. I'm happy because there's not a single person in that chorus that does not play a scene. They're all magnificent artists in their own right, and we have such a good time together.
Ah, I love it. I love hearing that. Dan, what do we have up next? Come on. What are we looking at?
This is Baba the Turk. This is the Rake's Progress. And this is a role that I've done, I think, 3 times at the Met in this iteration. And this is the big scene after Baba has been revealed, and she sings the very end of her aria. It's very funny because within 2 acts, she appears and her aria is split into 2. In the middle of her aria, they cover her with a sheet, and she stops singing and sort of becomes one of the pieces of furniture in her home. And then when we see her again, everything in her home is being auctioned off, and they uncover her, and she begins to sing where she left off. It's very funny. And I love, this is actually one of my very favorite costumes I've ever worn. I love feathers, and my favorite, actually one of my favorite stories about this, the very first time I ever did this role, I was singing with Dawn Upshaw, Jerry Hadley, and Sam Raimi. And I did 2 performances, and because Denise Graves was, I sang 2 performances, and Denise Graves sang the bulk of the performances, and was magnificent. But the second of my performances, when I went to take my bow, I was wearing this outfit, and I tripped on the stage as I was walking out to take my bow and hit the deck. And the audience was, the audience went from clapping to, and it was just horrible. And Sam Raimi and Jerry Hadley rushed down and picked me up. And I could not have been happier. And I got even more applause because I fell down.
You were like, note to self, note to self.
Exactly. And that was a really lovely, I've fallen down in front of a couple of great stars, and that's my favorite one.
Of all the falling you've done, that's one of your favorites.
All the falling, that was, the one that had the biggest payoff.
That is great. All right, Dan, next up, we have got, again, the transformation. It's banana
This
pants.
is Yeji Baba. Yeah, this is Yeji Baba in the one time I've sung it in Rusalka, which I was singing with Renee Fleming. And that was a really amazing, that was a wonderful sort of full circle moment for me, because Renee also studied with my teacher, Patricia Mislin. And the very first time I ever heard her sing was in a Richard Tucker concert after she won the Tucker Award. And she sang Song to the Moon from Rusalka. So that's the first thing I ever heard Renee sing. And here I am singing in that same opera with her at the Metropolitan Opera, and with the great, great conductor, Jerzy Belolavec, who was transformative for me. Working with him was one of the great joys I've ever had on stage.
That is, again, when you describe this, I'm like, this is like, you won the contest and you kept winning the contest.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good. And then our next photo, it's not on stage at the Met, but it is on the Met's Pride float. Hit us with that picture, Tell us what we're looking at, Stephanie.
Oh, you're looking at me and Anthony Roth Costanzo on the very first Pride float, done for Pride with the Metropolitan Opera. And I am wearing a phenomenal outfit designed and built by the great Machine Dazzle,
Oh,
who has
what an artist.
Machine has made some really amazing things for me in my drag career. And so they made this fantastic outfit for me. And Anthony and I spent the afternoon singing at the top of our lungs and shocking the heck out of people because no one figured out until we would pass them that we were actually singing live.
Yes.
The recorded tracks. And I can tell you, I've never sung for a larger audience or a more enthusiastic, loving audience. It was so amazing to be surrounded by all these incredible people. And again, the members of the Metropolitan Opera marching right behind us, members of the chorus marching right behind us and singing. And it was absolute heaven.
Oh, it looks unbelievable. Machine. If you're
Well,
not
look at
familiar with,
Anthony. I mean, come on.
I know.
Anthony is just,
It's just so
incredible.
happy.
Could have worn this in Akhenaten.
Could have. I love your horn. I love that wig. If you're not familiar with Machine Dazzle's work, Dan Marshall just put a link in the chat. Such an artist, does a lot of work for Taylor Mack. Just amazing.
Magical. Yeah.
Listen, I just want to check and see, Dan, thank you for taking us through that, Stephanie. Dan, do we have any questions from our educators? I have more questions for Stephanie. But if our educators have any questions, I just want to give them an opportunity. Dan, what you got?
Yeah, Andra from Philadelphia Public Schools. Andra, can I spotlight you? Looks like your camera's on. She has a great question about this.
Andra always has great questions.
She really delivers. Andra has a question about this reimagining of Cendrillon in English. Here she is.
Andra, hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Stephanie. And so I teach for Philly Public Schools. I'm very happy to share that I gave my students choices earlier in the year between La Fille du Régiment and Cendrillon, and they chose Cendrillon. And so when I said, oh, this weekend I'm going to professional development and Madame de la Altière will be there, they were really excited. So
yeah.
Now what they're going to be, my 7th grade students, although they love opera, I'm still trying to get them, a lot of opera is in foreign language. So knowing that this is now being redone in English, I'm just curious, what's the process been like from going from the French version? And if you hear panting, I have my dog right beside me right now.
I can hear it.
What was it like learning the French version and now moving to the English version?
Being that I'd only sung the role once in French, it wasn't that difficult. If I was asked to sing quickly in English, a role I've sung a bazillion times, it would have been more difficult, I think. But my brain has not held on to the French with real gusto. So it was not that difficult to go into the English. And the thing that's nice about the English is that I don't have to go through the lens of translation. I speak French, with my husband, but he taught me pillow French. So I don't, I'm not fluent in operatic French. But it's really wonderful because when you don't have to deal with that level of translation, the behavior is more immediate, and also the audience has a more immediate reaction to it. So I'm hoping that really translates, no pun intended, to our audience. And I love your Advent calendar, by the way, quite nice.
Oh, thank you. There is a a black dog on the top, and I have a
There you
little
go.
black dog beside me. So,
There you go.
all right.
Love
Thank
it.
you very much.
Andra, thank you so much. Thank you always. You always have such wonderful questions. We are nearing time, but Dan, will you let me know if there's any other particularly excellent questions, or I'll keep going?
I think move forward, Susan, and
Okay, I'm
we'll
gonna go.
keep
I'm gonna go
monitoring the
for it
chat.
because I really don't want to let you go away without you talking a little bit about your drag king persona. Will you tell us a little bit about Blithely?
Sure. Blythe Oratonio was born in the basement of an Episcopalian church in the Penn State campus
Sure.
in Philadelphia,
Yes.
as they are in general, you know. And this is something that I originally did in 2017 for Philadelphia Opera, along with the Bearded Ladies Cabaret in Philadelphia. And I developed this character with John Jarborough, the director of the Bearded Ladies Cabaret, along with my very dear friend, Dido van Rigersberg, also known as Martha Graham Cracker. And we did this piece, this original piece called Dido and Aeneas, Two Queens, One Night, for the Philadelphia Opera as a fundraiser. And it just kind of morphed into something more because he kind of changed my life and gave me agency over the way my own voice has changed over the years, and gave me an opportunity to sing tenor, which I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. And so now I have a place to do that and to explore that. And the way and the music that I perform, that's been arranged for me by the brilliant musician Dan Kazemi, who is my music director, creates a great mixture of disco, rock and roll, and opera, which is wonderful. And we use that to tell real stories. And the piece that has eventually developed from that, which is called Blithely Ever After. There's another iteration called Blithely After Hours. I mean, we're always working on other iterations. Is basically the story of an operatic tenor that wants to be a rock and roll artist. But more than that, it's the story of transitions and changes, of aging, of voice changing, the perils of the stage. It's an opportunity for me to tell stories in a different way and to connect with a whole different demographic of audiences. But it also has, I've had one of my absolute most favorite reactions that I've ever gotten was I did a 30-minute version of this show for the Resonant Bodies Festival 2 years ago. And is it 2 years ago? Time has kind of flown by. I think it's 2 years ago. Yeah. And Rosalind Elias came to see it, the great mezzo-soprano Rosalind Elias, who unfortunately passed this last year. And Roz was one of my just a great friend. And I met her doing Bartered Bride at the Metropolitan Opera back when I was a kid. It was one of my first assignments. And I just loved Roz. To know her was to be in love with her. And she came to this show and she sent me this beautiful note, which I still have. And basically she said, I love what this is. I think it's amazing. And I think you need to keep doing it and don't change a thing. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. And that meant the world to me, because this came from someone who had an incredible integrity and ability, was a brilliant performer, a brilliant singer, and more than that, an extraordinary human being. And she was great because she tapped into humanity. And for me, that's something that Blythe allows me to do. He allows me to tell stories that I might not be able to tell about myself as Stephanie. Yeah. And that's a great gift.
I love it. the personal creative agency and self-expression that you're exercising, and also just giving us classics. You had me at Jesse's Girl. I love it. I love what
thank
you're
you.
doing with that.
I appreciate it.
I want to give one of our educators the last question. Carrie Sullett, would you please welcome to the stage Carrie Sullett, if you're willing to. Hi, Carrie. Unmute yourself, and what do you got for Stephanie? I know.
There we
you
go. Took a
There you
minute.
go.
Sorry about that. Thanks so
Okay.
much for joining us today. We appreciate having you and learning from you. And I think I'm one of probably several educators on this call who are people who work with younger students. And since you're an educator who work with musicians and students who are further along as people and as musicians, I'm just wondering if you have any insight for us in terms of things you've learned from them that would be beneficial for us to know as we coach these musicians and students along the way.
Thank you, Carrie. Great question.
I think that's a beautiful question, and I'm very interested in work with younger artists, and high school, pre-high school, undergrads. I think everyone has something to offer, and I think one of the most important things that I am looking for in a graduate artist is someone who has curiosity and an inventive mind. And I think one of the things that happens as we develop as students in the world of academia is academia insists on checklists, right? So you're constantly being prescribed a way of learning and a way of cataloging that learning, so that you have just a big, okay, this is, for instance, in this particular year, I'm going to learn this kind of diction. I'm going to learn this kind of aria. As you get older, the thing that everybody talks about is, what are your 5 arias? What's your aria package? Blah, 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 all of that, which I find far less interesting. Is very important, don't get me wrong, but I find it far less interesting than knowing what a singer is gleaning on their own, what they are getting from just the things that we put in their path, things to listen to. We don't ask young singers or young people to kind of widen that look. And I'm very interested in people who are able to express themselves in a myriad way, a number of ways. And what ends up happening in academia is all of that ends up being whittled down to like these little categories, and we jam people in there because that's the best way to evaluate them, right? It's necessary, but I think we start pigeonholing students way too young, and we don't because we have to fulfill all of these categories. We all know what this is. We all know what this is as educators. There's an agenda that we have to fill, and the thing that's difficult is we have to find some way to work within that agenda to really, really help these students to express themselves in many ways, and to become very curious about lots of different kinds of art. And that's really hard to do because we have very little time. And anybody who's teaching in the lower grades, you're given such a short amount of time to do that. But I think it's really important that we show them as much as possible, and also that we find a way to connect with what they already think is exciting creatively. So that we have to think outside the box as creators and as teachers, and help them become creators rather than just vessels. And I mean, this is a huge question, and I'm so glad you asked it, and I could talk about this forever. But the thing I'm looking for in young students is creativity, imagination, and curiosity. And those are the three hardest things to deal with because it cannot be graded. And that's all the business of teaching wants us to do.
You're getting some big love from the room, Steph.
But the
Yeah.
most important thing that we do is to tickle that creative, that creative nodule, to get them to realize that they all have something that is important to say, and that there are many ways to say it. And as creative teachers, and that's what we are, we can't just call ourselves voice teachers, and I teach flute, and I teach euphonium, and I teach art. We're all creators, all of us. And we have to tap into that creative nature that made us want to get into this business in the first place, and wake that thing up in those students. And that is what is going to create the next generation of not just teachers and performers, but admirers of the art and people who are going to buy tickets. To be really, really brutally honest, if we don't get people interested in art, they won't participate in any way. And we need everyone in our society to participate in art as consumers, performers, and teachers. That's what we need. And we have to get them excited about it. We have to show them the passion, but passion that is specific, that is honest, that is creative and real, and to make sure that they know that they have agency to do that.
Preach.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It's a big soapbox number for me.
Carrie, thank you for that wonderful question. Look at the passion
you.
that you've unlocked in our guest. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Carrie. And Stephanie, thank you so much on behalf of everyone that's gathered here today. It's such a joy and such an inspiration to get time with you as a human being, as an educator, as an artist and a performer. It really is just a gift to get this time with you. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
to take
Susan.
time. You took time out of your busy schedule, as did Dainty June. And we really want to
she
know.
went to sleep. What can I say? I bored the
You're
hell
getting
out of
more
her
and more
yesterday.
heated and passionate, and she's getting sleepier and sleepier and sleepier. Thank
That's
you
what happens.
so much. We appreciate
you.
you.
I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye
Bye.
now.
Come on, preach, Stephanie Blythe. Oh my gosh, that was wonderful. And I don't know how else to use human language to state this. So having the gift of being in the presence of somebody like that, who is working at the highest levels in so many different dimensions, is just like, I want to be like Stephanie Blythe when I grow up. Fingers crossed, we'll see how I do.